Mm.
But at least she voted against it. At least we can say there was not a unanimous vote in Parliament to bomb the shit out of Libya. And
Yeah,
now look
even
what
if it
they've
was
got.
just one person.
Yeah.
And that my question is this. I I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Well, I don't know what you're talking about there because I think you're fading out there. I don't know. I have no idea what you said. Start it again.
I'm fading in and out on you here, man. So
Yeah.
uh,
It's like
uh
your internet connection is going off and on.
yeah, I'm gonna see if I can quickly do something about that. But while I'm
Why don't we
doing
go to a
this,
track and then we'll come back and we'll talk about whatever you were just about to bring up. Sound cool?
yeah.
Yeah, man. Here we go. No effects. Codependence Day off. Cokie the Clown.
I haven't got any more excuses. We got way past alcohol abuses. It's too late. We gotta celebrate codependence day. Self-cause, affliction, magnified with chemical addiction. We got an A. We gotta celebrate codependence day. Veteran, role player, you're the addict, come with the enabler. You wanna play? Let's make everyday codependent. See symptoms, it gets clearer. Kinda just like looking in a mirror. Celebrate our disarray on Codependence Day. With fireworks and power lines, attempt to meld resolute minds. January 1st through New Year's Eve, we seem to spend rationalizing.
And we're back. And are you back, Mike?
I think so. I had a little internet connection trouble there for a second,
Yeah,
but
man.
I'm pretty sure that's all.
Sometimes I swear that you have microscopic conservative operatives within your technology.
Yeah, I'm starting to worry about that too. I'm gonna have to get some software to check that out.
Anti-conservative viral software or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right on. So,
So what I was gonna say, I thought it was interesting. In passing, you had mentioned to me the issue of this Volcker rule that's coming up a little bit, well, barely anything in the news, but
yeah.
I thought that you might want to talk about that for a second.
Well, essentially, what the Volcker rule is, it's a partial reinstatement of the Glass-Steagall Act, which prevents investment houses slash banks, investment banks, so to speak, to
In the United States?
yeah, to
Yeah.
do to trade customers' money, and even have their own trades on such things as the derivatives market, etc. Because this is why the American banking system has collapsed and will collapse again, and it's the same reason our banking system will collapse, is because there's no restraint on banks, chartered banks, from trading on their own behalf on such in casinos, basically, which is what the derivatives market is.
Right.
So with the insane amount of gambling that's permitted in both the States and Canada, you can guarantee your banking system is going to collapse, because in a casino, if you stay long enough, you will always leave a loser, and that's
Right.
essentially what the derivatives market is. And so the point is that in the Bank of Canada, in the Bank Act of Canada, there used to be measures to prevent banks from trading on owning investment houses, and from owning insurance companies. So in Canada, we called it the three pillars of the economy: investment trading, banking, and insurance. Now, Brian Mulroney did away with all that so that banks could buy up insurance companies and they could buy up investment houses and trade their own funds on the stock market. That's why you have the Royal Bank of Canada and, for example, having a $5 trillion exposure to the American derivatives market. $5 trillion.
Right. So this whole topic kind of relates back to when we had talked about banking in Canada and the Canadian banking system not being immune to the American or the global market.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, isn't it suggested that Canada, our nation, Canada, is going to try to contest the Volcker rule being applied against them in the United States?
Yes. It's not a done deal, but there has been suggestion that Canada will challenge the Volcker, Canadian banks, I should say, will challenge the Volcker rule under NAFTA. Because as we know, the Canadian banks all have interest in the States, right? They, the Royal Bank especially and TD Bank do a lot of their business south of the border, which is, I don't know, not such a great idea as far as I'm concerned. Because it results in massive exposure to their derivatives market and to their housing market, which both seem to tank and will be tanking again. And so the point of the matter is that bankers tend to agree with bankers, and I believe that there is an international banking cartel that tends to work with each other against populations and against governments that want to regulate them.
Right. So here you have the American government actually doing something to try to change the nature of their system.
Keep in mind, the American banks cannot challenge the American government under NAFTA. It would take a Canadian bank to launch a NAFTA challenge, and that has nothing to do with our government. But because our government is the signatory in the NAFTA, it does, as you've pointed out to me before, it does make this situation look like a trade dispute between two countries, where it's really just the banks on both sides of the borders playing two governments off against each other using a piece of shit legal document that we should never have signed.
Right, in their real-world Monopoly game, they just pulled the card that lets them, it's like, you get to take the NAFTA rules and apply them to your own benefit, for your own benefit, across borders, while making it look like it's, like you said,
governments are fighting.
Two governments in dispute, when really it's just bankers trying to find a way around the legal framework in one country by using a bank in another country.
Absolutely, that's exactly what's happening there, and here on Election Fallout, we're going to keep track of that issue because people need to know, and you're not going to hear this from the mainstream media, this perspective. It's up to you to decide whether it makes more sense than what you are going to hear from the mainstream media, which is going to cover the trade dispute between two countries and not the banking cartel cooperating with itself and playing two countries off against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What else do you got, Mike?
Well, I know that there's been a small adjustment in Canadian Parliament recently.
Yeah. A minor disruption in the force.
Yes, most certainly.
The opposition force.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that a Star Wars reference?
It is, and I hate Star Wars.
Me too. But so we had an NDP member from Quebec, Lise Saint Denis, I believe her name is.
Yeah, Lise Saint Denis.
And she has decided that she's going to leave the NDP party, and apparently the one thing that I hadn't seen in the media, but apparently it's been mentioned, was that she approached the Liberals, which is the only thing about this situation that makes me a little happier about it. I'm glad that the Liberals aren't out trying to cherry pick, and vice versa.
Yeah, no.
NDP cherry pick.
The Liberals have better things to do than to cherry pick NDP, like not so loyal NDP MPs.
Mm-hmm. So at least it was her coming forward and deciding for her own reasons that she wanted to be in a different party.
Yeah.
But
see, I did not treat this as good news in any way, shape, or form, and Well, perhaps because I have no loyalty to either party, but I do have a loyalty to the idea that Stephen Harper's agenda should be opposed. So when the NDP lost one and then the Liberals gained one, I thought that hardly even matters, and it didn't matter to me until I saw them start sniping back and forth. And I thought, well, that's not going to result in them cooperating. This doesn't lend itself well to a future in which these two parties cooperate against Stephen Harper. So I didn't treat the only winner. The only winner I saw out of this deal was Stephen Harper himself, and I couldn't fail to notice that the NDP made some statements that I found were completely hypocritical and unfounded and baseless and unsupportable, and it kind of irritated me. Bob Ray I found handled it with class. Bob Ray basically just said, it's one seat. Doesn't make a big difference. This does not mean there's about to be a tidal wave of NDP support sliding to the Liberals. It means nothing. It's one person.
Bob Ray said that?
Yeah, he said it. He said it doesn't really mean anything. So, but if you were going to be confrontational about it, he says, maybe you would say, if you were the interim leader of the Liberal Party, you might come out and say, this is a sign that the fortunes are turning in favor of the Liberals and the NDP is soft and there's probably a lot of Liberal sentiment within the ranks and we're going to see, you know what I mean? He didn't say that. He says it means virtually nothing. It's one person.
Yeah, well, that's
you know what I
good then too, in the sense that Bob Ray would be willing to be sensible about this and not politicize it more than it needs to be.
Yeah.
But you're right. The only winner in this game is Stephen Harper, who I'm sure sat there and rubbed his hands together.
Oh yeah, he probably thought it was hilarious. You know what I mean? And then you see people in the NDP coming. What's his name? Guy Caron, the caucus leader from the NDP in Quebec caucus leader. I believe his name is Guy Caron. I'd have to check it. And he came out and said it was against the spirit of democracy because people didn't necessarily vote for her. They voted for the party or they voted for the leader or whatever, but they didn't necessarily have to be just voting for her. So they encouraged her to step down and run in a by-election in order to be a Liberal, right? And I thought that was just a titch hypocritical, because if in one hand you're going to say they were probably voting for the leader of the NDP, and on the other hand you're going to say that based on that fact she has to run in a by-election because people voted for the leader, not for her. Well, they don't have a leader. They certainly, no one voted for Nicole Turmel.
And of course the other issue there is that to frame it that way also totally misses the fact that no matter what influences a person to vote for the person, they ultimately mark their ballot distinctly for the person. You only get to vote for your local candidate.
Right.
I mean, you could argue to some extent that you may have voted for her within a party, but even that is kind of starting to.
I would say that people vote for a mixture, and depending upon the situation, they may be voting for the individual, they may be voting for the party, they may be voting for the leader. So for the NDP to take the position that her crossing the floor is some sort of perversion of democracy, well, by their own logic, by saying that, they probably should have to have 100 people stepping down right now to run in by-elections, because I didn't vote for my individual candidate. I voted for Jack Layton. So I don't, and I'm not going to, and if I wasn't a member of the NDP or if I didn't pay my membership dues, right?
If the only other thing I could add
my
to
vote
that
has
too,
been cancelled.
Yeah, and the only other thing I could add to that too is the NDP probably could have drawn the line at 1 point and 1 point only. The only criticism they really have against her is that when she became a candidate for Member of Parliament within the NDP party rules, you actually agree not to ever cross the floor. So she broke her own word to the NDP party, but that's as far as it goes.
And
there is nothing legally that stops her from doing what she did.
Yeah, in her defense, she says that her understanding of the NDP positions on certain key issues weren't honored in Parliament.